Welcome to a Purple Chips tutorial webinar. I'm John Schwinghamer, the author of Purple Chips, published by John Wiley & Sons and available everywhere. Our webinar today is about valuation resets. How do you know when a valuation reset occurs? There's a few key points. First of all, the EPS trend usually continues and the valuation changes dramatically. I'll show you this in a few minutes. This is likely when a stock trades at a high valuation or multiple. And also valuation resets tend to be very common in a bear market. Investors will pay less for every dollar of earnings and hence a valuation reset. Now let's take a look at a couple of stocks. We're going to use, in our example, we're going to use Baidu, symbol BIDU, and Green Mountain Coffee. Now in the case of Baidu, what you're seeing here is the long-term chart, the monthly chart with the earnings per share overlay. The white line being the earnings per share line. And in this case, we see that there was a valuation reset. And I'll just draw in what happened here. When we reached this point here, which I just highlighted, around $100, in effect, the earnings line was down here. Okay, so that's what the earnings line would have looked like at that time. This was a valuation reset because it was much lower than the previous range, which had been up here. So normally, Baidu had been trading somewhere between, somewhere between, let's say, here. The earnings line had been there and up to here. And then all of a sudden we broke down and this became the new trading range. So going forward, this is what we expected as a trading range. So that was a valuation reset. And what I'll show you is what it looked like before. I'll show you what the chart of Baidu looked like when we were back in April here. So I'm just going to go back here. I'll change the settings on the chart and you'll actually see how it looked at that time. So I'm going to go back to 2000 and here I'm going to change the date. So the chart is going to end in April. Now here you can see this doesn't look like anything extraordinary because there was no valuation reset at this point. And normally, on the Purple Chips model, we would have expected the high valuation to be somewhere in this zone. And of course, this would have been considered the low valuation. Now, that's actually not what happened. Because what happened just after this, which I'll show you in a minute, is that the stock went down and actually traded down to $100. And so the earnings line would have been like this. So that is what a valuation reset is. And so you see how the stock, now I'll bring this back to today, and you can see this is what it looks like now. So what happens when you have a valuation reset? The valuation range changes. And so we went from being at a new low valuation, and now I would consider this to be the high end of the valuation. It does not mean the stock can't move higher, but it does mean that we've got a new valuation range going forward. So the stock of in this case, Baidu could go up to 150, but that would constitute a lower valuation than the last time when it was over here, which would have been a much higher valuation. Now, in the case of Green Mountain Coffee, let's have a look at Green Mountain Coffee. Just a minute, I'll just erase this. Okay, now let's go over to Green Mountain Coffee. And here's what it looks like. And again, we had a valuation reset. Green Mountain Coffee went from being in a low valuation zone over here, and then it actually fell down. And this is when you had the valuation reset there. So I'll go back again. Just a minute. I'll just switch modes here. I'm going to go back to the period just prior to the valuation reset. So we'll go back to April 2012 again, and we'll see what it looked like at that time. So I'm going to go back here, and we'll go back to April. So what does Green Mountain look like in April? So you can see that Green Mountain looked pretty normal back then. This was a growth company. Now what I need to point out is that when stocks have very high PE values, okay, like at this time it had a 22 PE, and Green Mountain was trading around $48, so it was still fairly high. much higher than the market. The S&P was trading around 15 times earnings, and Green Mountain was considered a growth stock. What happened after this was that Green Mountain went down based on disappointing earnings outlook, and the EPS line actually shifted down to here. So the stock traded down actually to about, I believe it was around $20, the low. So that's what happens with a valuation reset. That's the thing about valuation resets, and I'm John Schwinghamer, and that's all for today's little tutorial on valuation resets. If you have any questions about these, please feel free to contact me, either email me or give me a call. My number's on the website. And I'm John Schwinghamer, the author of Purple Chips, and thank you for watching today.